That's what the transgender activists say. They say, forget about biological sex. My gender expression doesn't have to have anything to do with.
No, it's that you're still stuck in grade 4 and you think biological sex equals gender. That's the problem. You're more than welcome to speak about things like sexual organs, sexuality. In fact, it's encouraged amongst these communities as well as just within the scientific community. It's like, oh yes, we're actually learning vastly more about this field. It's far more interesting than we ever thought possible. And yes, there's a separation between a lot of these different categories. Did you know that sexuality is different than sexual organs, sexual orientation? Did you know that gender and gender identity and gender expression, these are different things? And it actually becomes more fascinating the more you learn, like anything else.
What I call to ban transgenderism entirely. I made the point that if you want women to have their own bathrooms, if you think women ought to be able to have their own locker rooms and not have to look at gigantic, gross men while little girls are getting changed.
That's cis dudes. It's cis dude. The overwhelming majority of the incidences of that happening is almost entirely cis dudes. There's a few rare exceptions. These cases are obviously utilized frequently by the right, and sometimes they're not even true. Like the ones that they used quite a bit for a while about a specific happening in a school where a young boy had unfortunately sexually assaulted a young girl by going into the girl's locker room, pretending to be a girl, saying that they identified as a girl, so that's why they were allowed to do it. The school board could find no actual proof of this happening. This was just brought up by one of the concerned parents at a PTA meeting, but there was an actual case of this happening where there was two parties, one accusing the other of this happening. So it doesn't even matter sometimes to them if it's real or not. And I would say overall, women probably would want to be safer generally. Doesn't matter if they're trans women, cis women, women in general will most likely like to be safer. They are the majority of individuals in terms of gender-based violence who receive gender-based violence. It is usually at the hands of cis men who are doing it to women. That is the reality situation, and that includes trans women. Trans women are more often the victims of sexual assault and sexual violence, and they have to deal with other forms of bigotry, such as trans misogyny. So not just misogyny for perhaps being femme-presenting or being a woman in every way, shape, and form to someone who's going to be an assailant, but also the fact that after someone attacks them, they can try and use the trans panic defense, similar to the gay panic defense, and that, oh, yes, they were trying to trick me. That's what happened.
If you want any of those things, you have to ban transgenderism entirely. It's not enough to say, well, you have to wait until you're 12 or whatever people are saying now. It has to be the whole thing, because if men have the right to behave as women and identify as women for the purposes of public life, then women can't have their own spaces. And we as a society cannot have our own standards and norms, and we're not allowed to live according to reality. We have to live according to the delusions of these troubled people. And I think we, the people, have a right to reality. And I think women have a right to their own spaces. And so that means you got to ban the thing entirely. And oh my goodness, what these people say. They said that I was calling for the extermination of transgender people.
I think it's within like 30 seconds, right?
Entirely. It's not enough to be changed. If you want any of those things, you have to ban transgenderism entirely. It's not.
That's in this clip. It's less than a minute between the two, between you saying you want to ban transgenderism entirely and then skipping over to, oh, they're accusing me of wanting to ban transgenderism entirely. No, I just want to ban transgenderism entirely. I just don't want transgenderism to exist anymore. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. But oh, they'll accuse you of not wanting trans people to exist or something like that. I just don't want trans people to exist. Is this so hard? I don't understand. Why is there so much confusion?
I said, what? I must have missed that part of my show. When did I say that? I don't know how you could have a genocide of transgender people, because genocide refers to genes. It refers to genetics. It refers to biology. And the whole point of transgenderism is that it has nothing to do with biology.
So they're really behind the times at this point, because they still think that it's like penis equals gender. Vagina equals gender. That's about as far as they've gone. I mean, that's not really progressing past what, grade 4 at this point, because like it's become a lot more interesting in terms of my understanding that not only gender being a social construct, but even what we sometimes do in order to select someone within society is someone is going to be assigned a gender at birth. What creates the very conditions that makes them assigned that gender at birth is actually far more complex. It's not just the chromosomes. It's not just the amount of testosterone or progesterone or other hormones that are being released within the body. Sometimes there are cases in which the doctor can identify someone as a gender, and then later on in life they realize, well, they actually have different sexual organs than the gender they were traditionally assigned with. And then all of a sudden this becomes a case of, wow, so am I technically a man or a woman? Because this is being defined strictly based on the fact that I have ovaries, a womb, stuff like that, or you might have a penis, or you might have a large clitoris, or I might have a very small penis, or I might have a very large penis, or I might have a very large set of ovaries, or a large, whatever the case or the conditions or the differences or the size or blah, 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 trying to define an entire gender, because gender itself being a social construct, one that changes over time. The interesting part about that entire, people constantly asking about traditional masculinity. What happened to traditional masculinity? We lost that. We used to have very brave men. Remember those warriors, those Spartan warriors, and they were just large and muscular and just really nice and greased up, and they all really hung out with the homies, and they took care of each other in moments of need, and they really took care of each other and kept each other warm in the winter, and sometimes enjoyed the pleasures of each other's flesh. We lost that. We lost what used to be a masculine man. Did you know that a lot of your Greek heroes, they were actually well known for bawling, crying? That was a massive thing. There is so much literature, sculptures, art of all of these Greek gods, in some cases. Greek gods bawling, talking about their feelings, having empathy, lacking empathy, shit like that. It seems as if these ideas of what is or is not a man at any given time really got kind of destroyed with the whole Puritanism thing. Like most things, the Christians came along and ruined everything. And now it's about what does thou or thou not have in terms of thy sexual just weird shit. Weird shit.
That's what the transgender activists say. They say, forget about biological sex. My gender expression doesn't have to have anything to do with me.
No, it's that you're still stuck in grade 4 and you think biological sex equals gender. That's the problem. You're more than welcome to speak about things like sexual organs, sexuality. In fact, it's encouraged amongst these communities as well as just within the scientific community. It's like, oh yes, we're actually learning vastly more about this field. It's far more interesting than we ever thought possible. And yes, there's a separation between a lot of these different categories. Did you know that sexuality is different than sexual organs, sexual orientation? Did you know that gender and gender identity and gender expression, these are different things? And it actually becomes more fascinating the more you learn, like anything else.
My biological sex. Okay, well then there can't be a genocide. That refers to genetics. But furthermore, nobody's calling to exterminate.
By the way, it's the same thing. If he was speaking the way he's speaking right now about Jewish people, about black people, about gay people, about lesbians, about bisexual people, being like, well, I mean, I'm just saying that in terms of grounding our axioms, we know that these people technically cannot be defined as being in existence. These people technically are less than. I mean, these people are technically not as good as what I am trying to obviously broadcast very loudly here. And no, they don't deserve any kind of protection because they're not even in existence. That's why I just think we should eliminate the ability for people to have to do certain things.
And anybody. Because the other problem with that statement is that transgender people is not a real ontological category. It's not a legitimate.
Replace trans people for any other group there. For someone to say it's not an ontological category. As in, we would not have a priori knowledge. If we were to say, start a new universe, if the world ended today, we started again tomorrow, everything went according to, instead of dolphins evolving into the super species, it was humans, okay? So humans, once again, got the consciousness, the walking upright, the fires, the increased size of the craniums, the needing so long to be raised by their mothers because of their large cranium size, all that kind of stuff. And then we got back, and then we made societies again, and we had society. You probably wouldn't have the exact same religions, you would probably have a lot of them be based around the sun, and the sun being a centerpiece, because that would just be what you needed for life. But let's just skip all that. But as time went on, you would probably discover the same natural occurrences within society and nature as you do now. You would have different words for them, certainly, different languages entirely, different countries, different names, different continents, different lines drawn in the ground, all that kind of stuff. But gay people would still exist, as they do throughout nature, right? And transhumans would still exist. Like this is so for him to state that, it's like, it's beyond barbaric when you put it in the context of what if he was talking about different groups? What if he was talking about different groups of people, you know?
Category of
Hail Sobek. Well, yeah, we would still be hailing Sobek, obviously.
being. There are people who think that they're the wrong sex, but they're mistaken. They're laboring under a delusion. And so we need to correct that delusion.
Again, he doesn't even know the difference between sex, gender, sexual organs, sexual orientation. The whole thing is just PP means boy. PP means boy. Vagina means girl. Transgenderism ultimately is a lie. It's a deception. It's a fraud. A fraud not protected by the First Amendment. Fraud is not a category protected by the principles of free speech. You have no right to fraud. Like, again, they all know what they're doing. Okay, this is a decided effort to, and this is you got to also point out, is largely coming right now in this severity from the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire has both Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, obviously, but Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is the one who's saying, "I would rather die than have a trans kid," or "I would rather have a trans kid not exist than be trans," shit like that. Like, the straight up homophobic asshole father who used to say, like, "I'd rather you die than be gay, son," that kind of shit, has a TV show where he's paid millions and millions of dollars to do that, and then to say that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, he's not saying it about gay people, he's saying it about trans people, because that is the current target of the fascists of the far right, but they're saying this shit out loud. YouTube is promoting this. YouTube is promoting their videos in their algorithms, taking millions and millions of dollars from them to advertise. And then, yes, once Pride rolls around, YouTube will obviously probably, not talk about it as much, and then just kind of come out of nowhere and be like, you know what, we're very pro-LGBTQ, we love all of you, we're gay too, don't worry, we just came out. But they know what they're doing. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback, because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demmel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tal, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.